Welcome to the Crypto Layer HQ. Today we will be covering what MSTR is telling us about Bitcoin. So currently MSTR has a Bitcoin average of 76,000, which we can see is our critical level that we've mentioned in previous videos. Once we broke that level, we then broke to 60K very rapidly. So this was definitely a key level in many senses, including MSTR's average purchase price. So we can see now they're currently in the red. If we look at the MSTR chart, we can see there are a lot of similarities this cycle compared to last cycle. We can see if we overlay Bitcoin that MSTR actually topped before Bitcoin did, and the exact same thing happened last cycle. So we can see MSTR topped in November 2024, and then Bitcoin eventually topped in October of 2025. We can see similarly last cycle, we got MSTR topped in February 2021, and then Bitcoin had its final top in November 2021. So very similar patterns. We can see MSTR last cycle took 147 days to bottom from its top. And if we look this cycle, if we measure from when we topped in November 2024 and we go out 477 days, that takes us to October 2026. We've identified October as a very likely bottom, and MSTR is also showing us that there's a good chance we end up bottoming in October, because last cycle the same thing happened. Took 477 days to go from the peak to the bottom. We can see also that it's following a very similar pattern. If we overlay the bar charts, if we overlay the charts from last cycle to this cycle, and let's just mark down October 20th, which is the amount of time it took for MSTR to bottom last cycle. And if we overlay, we can see MSTR actually followed a very similar pattern where it topped and then had a second rally and then eventually came back down. We can see October would essentially be here, and we could potentially have a chart that looks something like this, where we get our initial drop and then a further drop and then eventually consolidation, maybe a double bottom, one we get in April, May, and then another one we get in October. But there is a good chance, since we've been following the exact pattern so far, that we will continue to follow it. But what I find the most interesting is that it took exactly 477 days to bottom from the top. And if we look from the top right now, if we go to 477 days, that'll take us to exactly October 2026, which we've identified as a likely bottom for Bitcoin. If we go from the top to the 20th of October, that would look something like this when we bottom. So from today, that would mean we will bottom in approximately 250 days. So I think a lot of signs are pointing to a bottom in October being most likely. Of course, that could end up happening earlier or later if people end up front running the bottom and we end up getting a bottom slightly earlier, or people front running it could actually result in getting a further dump, since oftentimes market do things that investors aren't expecting and throws curveballs that then make us wonder if the same thing is going to happen this time and if the bottom will actually hold in October. And then oftentimes that's what ends up resulting in getting a bottom in October. So I just thought I would cover what MSTR is potentially telling us about Bitcoin. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, but I do think we will end up getting something similar to last cycle, since we've already followed a very similar pattern.